Welcome back, everyone. Michael Rosmer here with Offshore Citizen, and today we're going to discuss the subject of what is mind management and control, which is a really tricky and important subject. So before we jump into that, please hit the subscribe button as hard as you can. If you haven't done so already, subscribe, click the notification bell, and let's jump into things. Okay, so mind management and control. What is this all about? This is a standard which is applied for corporate residency. Okay, so when you have a company, very often the company is resident based in whole or in part on where the management and control is exercised. Now I wanted to get into this partially because of the fact that this varies quite a bit country to country. Okay, so the standards can be very different and you should be aware of them. Honestly, in a lot of cases, it's something people don't really worry about, it kind of gets overlooked, etc., but in theory it's in the law. So I'll give you an example of, in Malaysia, they have these rules. These rules don't really get applied very often. But you know, that being said, in theory it's there, so I'm always for planning things out legally so that you don't have to worry, as opposed to, you know, waking up one day 5 years later and realizing they're after you and you're going to owe back taxes for a whole bunch of stuff, right? So anyway, the way that mind management and control, so I'm using the term, the term is used differently country by country. So for example, some places say the place of central management and control. Some will say day-to-day management and control, or day-to-day management. Some will say mind management and control. Some will say management and control, etc., right? Or mind and management. There's all very different variations, etc. However, we're going to kind of cover a little bit of the gamut here. We're going to start with kind of the most extreme cases that are easy to deal with, and we're going to move to the most extreme cases that are hardest to deal with. And unfortunately, you know, you're going to have to look at that case by case. So if you want some help with that, you can always book a call with us or talk to us and help you out with how it applies to you, okay? Okay, so the extreme case here is that refers to where the director's decisions are made. And this tends to be fairly easy to get around because you can have directors who make the decision, and it will be referred to the highest level of decision making. Okay, so usually, in most cases, this refers not so much to day-to-day decisions, it's more about like high-level decisions. And I won't remember the quote exactly, but I'll kind of give you the general language from the Australian Tax Authority, which I often use with people because I think it's, although it's specific to Australia, it's general guidance all over the place that is quite useful, okay? So, we're talking about the highest levels. We're talking about director-level decisions, okay? The director-level decisions, now these might only be exercised quarterly through board meetings, right? These don't necessarily have to be day-to-day. They don't, like, you could be delegating the authority to an executive team, to a CEO, to managers, to employees, etc. And so things that might come under this are things like providing budgets. They may involve, we're going to pull down here a little bit closer, extreme high-level hiring decisions. So hiring the executive team, in particular the CEO, right? So selection of the CEO would typically be a decision you would expect from the directors, right? Providing often authorization of expenses over a certain amount. So if, for example, I'm going to do a merger and acquisition, if I'm going to engage in a contract that's over $500,000 or $1 million or something, it may have to go to the board, things like this. So note a specific example here. I may authorize someone. I may say, hey, listen, we're going to go and we're going to do a conference in Barcelona, and we're going to rent a big hall, and we're going to do a bunch of advertising, etc. I'm giving you a budget of $500,000 to go and make that work. That's my decision as the director. The decisions that all of the different people in the company make in order to make that come to pass, which could include spending money, etc., may have, that's not authorized. Like, it doesn't need to be authorized. It's not a management, it's not a director level decision. It's not that top management and control level, okay? All right, perfect. So that's the first thing. Now, it's worth noting here that documenting these decisions is important. Having structure around how these decisions are made is important, right? In theory, because sometimes people will say, well, are they going to go through my emails? They might. They might. Like, just depending on the country, etc., they have the ability to. So if you get into a dispute, they can go through and say, well, look, I'm looking at your instant messaging, I'm looking at your emails, etc., and I'm seeing that you clearly have this. Another thing that is a really big one that comes up quite often, and so you'll notice when you have the fiduciary services in places like Isle of Man Jersey, Guernsey, etc., is they typically want control of the bank account, right? So they're like, hey, we're going to authorize this, and the bank account signing authority is at this level. So it's hard to argue, hey, listen, I'm the only person who has the ability to spend money. Nobody else does, but I'm not the person who has the management and control. Very hard to make that argument, right? So now you may handle it by saying, hey, listen, we're going to authorize a budget that's going out. I'm going to put, X dollars, $100,000 a month or something into this account, and then you can go and you can spend down the budget from there, and then we're going to, keep topping it up. That may be the way that it's structured, right? So you have some control, but it's hard to argue that you have no financial control and that, or all the financial control, and that you're not the person with management and control. So this is where we're going to come to the kind of Australian tax office thing. So as I said, this does not mean that they're making all the decisions. This does not, you don't have to be involved in all of it in order to be those with management and control. And likewise, the opposite is true. Simply the fact that you have the right to does not make that you have management control. So for instance, one of the things that people would commonly do back in the day was apply basically shadow directors, right? People who, they're a director on paper, but they don't exercise any control. But the mere right, what they'll say in the language from the ATO, is the mere right to do this does not constitute management and control. It's a matter of fact. So this is a thing from kind of common law, is we pay attention to the facts, not what's on paper. It's substance over form, okay? This is a very, very important thing. It's a very important principle. We look at what are the facts. This is a facts-based decision, okay? And the facts say, hey, listen, you might be the janitor, but you're the one who's exercising management and control, therefore you are the person who triggers the management and control rules, okay? So it doesn't matter what your role is on paper, okay? In most of these cases. All right, so you say, okay, perfect. I'm going to go and I'm going to help to make this decision. I'm going to figure out what's happening here. So then what types of decisions would they make? Okay, this is the question. So some of these are, number one, reviewing the performance of the company. Okay, if you're not at least reviewing what is going on, then what are we talking about here? It's your asset. You're supposed to be the person in charge, and you're not reviewing what's happening? Are you kidding me? So who's reviewing it? If you're not, if you're on the flip side, if you are the person who's reviewing it, well, now maybe you're an accountant, right? Maybe you're going through doing the books. Maybe you're some sort of a manager just for day-to-day, looking at sales performance or something. But as the owner or director, etc., of the company, your fiduciary responsibility should be to be reviewing and helping to make decisions that optimize the performance of the company. Okay, so reviewing those things. Second of all, as I said, you may not be the person who comes up with the ideas, but you're typically going to authorize the high-level ideas. Okay. So a normal process would be to have the people say, okay, they're going to bring you the idea, or bring it to whoever this person is, or people in the case of a board of directors, who, hey, listen, we have an idea that we'd like to go and buy Pixar. We're coming to the Disney board. We're going to get authorization for, $8 billion to go and do this. Okay, great. Like, if you're not at least reviewing and kind of approving some of these things, then really what's going on with the role? Now, does this mean that if somebody is the person who's making a payment, that they are the management control person? Of course not. You could have a payments, like an accounts payable division, right? Or an accountant or somebody like that who's making payments on behalf of the company, and you just tell them, hey, pay the invoices, right? Well, they're just paying it. They're not, and this is why the question of mind is in there, right? We talk about control, and we talk about mind. Mind and control, I think there's like two really important words here, Are we exercising the mind around the guidance and the decision making here? Next, here's a really important thing. Do you always approve, or does this person always approve the decisions, or do they sometimes veto the decisions? If somebody is just rubber stamping everything, then are they the ones who are really exercising the control? Probably not, right? So we should see evidence that you're actually exercising that mind and control, right? By saying, hey, listen, you're presenting this idea, maybe 10 out of 11 ideas are great ideas and you approve them, okay. But we should see some cases, clearly there's going to be cases where you're going to disagree and you say, I veto that, no, we're not doing that. Okay, I should be able to see evidence of that, okay, so that's another one. This brings us to kind of the extreme example, right? The extreme example are cases where we have day-to-day management, right? Day-to-day management is trickier, right? Because we're talking about your actual day-to-day managers. And so oftentimes what we'll see is we'll see cases where somebody, they're like, okay, well, I'm willing to appoint a director to approve these things, and I'll bring them to them, etc. But the actual day-to-day management, I'm in the weeds of the business. Well, then you're in the weeds of the business. That's the way that it goes. You're going to have to hire somebody to do that. Otherwise, you're going to trigger that rule, right? So the reason we bring this up is because of the fact that sometimes it's necessary in your international structuring for you or somebody in the company not to be triggering the mind management and control rules, okay? And so it's important to understand, like, what are those? How do they fit in? And then how do you optimize your company in order to not trigger those if you don't want to be subject to tax in that particular jurisdiction? And this could be, look, you could literally have an external contractor. In theory, it does not have to be somebody who's on your payroll as a salaried employee. It could be some external contractor who you've given some sort of authority. And we see something similar with permanent establishments, right? Somebody has the authority to routinely or habitually conclude contracts on behalf of the entity. That may constitute a permanent establishment. That doesn't have to be necessarily somebody who is an employee. So anyway, I hope that helps you. I hope it gives you some idea. It is a facts-based thing, so it's like nuanced, and you need to get into it specific to your case. If you'd like some help with that, please reach out to me. Link below, clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. If you like the video, please click the subscribe button. We like subscribers. Subscribers are great. Subscribers are great people. We love them. So click that, click the notification bell, share it with your friends. Please, I really appreciate you watching the video. Check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com, and see if there's some ways that we can help you. And we will see you guys on the next video.